what are we talking about?
Talking about content, content refreshing, and how you
Yeah.
can improve upon already existing content.
Yeah. That's kind of that old SEO hack that we keep using because it's still super effective. But yeah, what does that, what do you think that looks like? Or not what do you think?
Yeah.
I know you know what it looks like. So tell us.
A few different things. So there's always just refreshing, right? Things are going to change year over year. So making small tweaks and updates to your current content to make sure it's performing. There's also repurposing. So just because something lives as a blog doesn't mean that it needs to stay a blog, right? You can turn that blog into video content. You can turn it into an infographic. You can turn it into other types of imagery. And I think that is where, people need to continue to evolve, because we've already talked about how much SERPs have changed over, year over year, month over month. They're going to continue to change and update. And so just because your page right now is ranking for, let's say, it's ranking as an organic ranking, you may add, an update can be adding some markup to it. So now we're getting some of those AI snippets. It could be adding different, backlinking to, kind of improve some of that authority. It could be turning it into a video, because now you're seeing that video is actually replacing the query that you've answered. It could be turning it into an infographic so that you've got some imagery related and you've got alt text on some of those. It's shareable and people can repost that, and now you're getting more eyes elsewhere. So, it doesn't have to stay, hey, I wrote this great thing, or I shot this great video. That's all it's going to be. We still look at things, from years past to either draw inspiration or to grow from. So as long as your content stays available in a newer sense, there's always an opportunity for it to still be viewed and drive more business, drive more traffic, just drive more eyes to your presence.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it's funny that you say that, because I know I'm usually like confused as to why people would search on TikTok for results, but even Google is constantly showing more and more video on SERPs. So you're kind of, like Google obviously realizes like people's the desired content, and just in the sense that TikTok in and of itself is as popular as it is, right? Like It's all video content, as opposed to Instagram, which now Instagram is a ton of reels and shorts and everything else. Like there's even shorts on YouTube now to so like basically every social media channel basically went to a video platform. Even LinkedIn's prioritizing it, right? So maybe I'm the idiot for not searching on TikTok.
Well,
but
I think about it like the video you just had up of like the guy making food, right?
Yeah,
I had no idea what platform that was on, but that probably started as a written recipe somewhere.
Sure.
And then somebody said, like, what would be even better than this recipe being written? Let me show people how to make it.
Right.
And maybe it actually takes 45 minutes to do all this stuff, right? Like, well, what if I chop that up and make it a 2-minute clip of like, This is what you need. This is it already in digestible format. Here's some overlay of the text so you can read it too. And I can see in not real time what the steps are to make it and how it should look when it's finished. Versus watching a cooking show that's going to take 45.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, because I think like even when you're, learning about anything, I mean, there's some aspect of like having a combination of visual, audible, and like that tactile rather, like inputs all happening, right? The more senses that you're kind of getting involved, the easier it is to remember and learn and capture. So it makes some sense to me that like, if you're just reading on a page and not having all those other elements, it kind of, it becomes limited. Although, some topics don't lend themselves to it as easy, but I do think that it's, interesting, because just like, I'm thinking of topics like, say, physics or something that maybe isn't as easy to just, unless you're very good at like doing, conceptual design and things like this. But, it's more interesting to sit and like listen to Brian Cox maybe describe black holes than it would be for me to just read a book about them.
Right.
And so that, there's something additional engaging in just having, that person tell me the material in a way that's engaging. So I think, that that, and that's the point of this, was to really talk about how, there is obviously value in, there's some amount of value in like your backlinks and your domain authority, of course, and then just so time of page existing. And so that's a lot of that, kind of old school.
Yep.
I say old school because I feel like this has been around a long time, is like refreshing content is like a thing. It's like go in there and, find the stuff that pages that are either, started trending down or are popular pages, and look at, do they need to be refreshed? Do they need to be edited? Like what new information exists that needs to be incorporated into the page? I think those are all, if you're going to be an authority on something, then like be the authority on it and recognize that information is constantly update, unless it's not. Obviously,
Yeah.
there is some amount of stuff. So then in that case, it's not as much about changing the specific messaging, because maybe that hasn't changed, but you're just the technology of the internet in general, things like animations and things like video and your ability to leverage prompts and all these other things. Like there's probably a lot of things that you could think through of like, hey, just to add to it. It's like, hey, if you're into this, physics thing, or this, here's a Monte Carlo simulation that you can run over this
Right.
other thing, right? Like there's aspects of like, how are we going to leverage this to be, to really take advantage and engage the audience with something that they're coming to you to learn about, right? So how are you going to make that more effective or better? And I think that's what makes it fun. I mean, that's also goes to why we think you need to update your website.
Right.
It's like it's like same thing. Like, are you you're selling modern software, you're selling things that exist today, but your website looks like every other website from forever ago. I mean, I think it's the, there's some of that that's also important.
Yeah, and you brought up something that like I hadn't thought of as much for repurposing, because it takes a significant amount more effort. So
Sure.
the output would need to match up in terms of what your return is. But one thing that I think is interesting that we don't do a lot with content, but that if you have the resources to do it, I'm going to make that a huge caveat, goes a long way, is gamification of content.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to turn some type of informational piece into something where people can interact and kind of take off on that content, right? Like it's reading about the migration from east to west is one thing, right? Back in the 1800s. Playing the Oregon Trail is a completely different thing.
Right.
You are still learning how people moved across the country.
Yeah.
You're still learning about popular areas that they may have stopped in or settled for a time. You're still learning about the wildlife that is around it and how people, how they had to get their food and what type of ailments they may have come across or whatever.
That's what I think of.
Right.
The ailments, like
dying of dysentery.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
but and so you're still
way to go.
learning about all of these things, but it's been gamified to, all right, like this is how people got across the country.
Sure.
And this is what they experienced and this is what they went through. And that is in theory content, right? Is the Oregon Trail, like that was happening.
Yeah.
Throughout that period of time. And somebody was like, you know what? I want people to know, to really embrace this.
Sure.
And they turned it into a game.
But I think like, as you're saying that makes me even, kind of argue with myself a little bit, because I feel like it's back to the audience to some extent, right? Like I think that depending on who you sell to, right? Like if you're selling stuff to the elderly, then, until some of us get a little bit older, like we are aware, like, using how to use the internet and in some ways you're still better than the younger generation. I mean, they don't know how it was made. So that's why it's like, there's this lack of, in some ways, this gap from, the AOL CDs to what today we do. So I think though, so that's where I think of like, I like that idea, like gamification, but even like my idea of like, let's create a prompt that allows you to take this into another thing. Like all that sounds good if you're talking to us, right? Like, but it does matter what the material is for and who the audience is supposed to be. But, so that I think it's both of like, how do we take advantage of like, the modern technology and what it can do today. Like how can you leverage your website to be even more of a powerful converting tool or training tool or whatever it is, and take advantage of all of the other things that are cool that are happening simultaneously. I think that's important, but don't, again, it's like what you said earlier about some stuff and on previous podcasts and things is like, don't do it just to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like do it with intention. So
Yeah.
why would this add value? How does this add value? But it's important because from a visibility and things perspective as a customer looking to get more, or as one of our customers, as a business trying to get more customers, like that, there's a lot of stuff out there that's probably pretty good that you
Yep.
spend some time on at some point that needs a little bit of love and will, could be recycled in another new positive experience for people.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that loop. I mean, that was a big thing that you had mentioned, just now. It's like the repurposing of that content. Like, it's like, yeah, it's on your website, but it could be on your YouTube channel. It could be on Instagram. We could make a TikTok version of it now. Like, you could put it in an ad. Like, there's things like you could take this thing and this one piece of stuff, and now recognizing that the user journey is so varied and so unique, you need those, like those remixes, whether you're using like a Juniper or HubSpot or any of these, and you kind of take this content and then remix it for all the channels. It's important to keep doing that, keep looking at it and making sure it's still worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in that idea of the customer journey and repurposing everything, the marketing adage of like how many touches you need before somebody remembers your brand or your product still holds weight, right? Like,
Yeah.
we are inundated with so many different signals so often that a lot of our brain is being trained to ignore it.
Right.
It's like, hey, like that's not for me, blocked out.
Yeah.
That's not for me here, blocked out. I am now in the space here to like look at whatever this content is. So like you could have touched them 5 different times and they ignored every single signal because they weren't in whatever environment they are most comfortable in receiving that message.
Yep. Well, and that I mean, and that makes me think a lot of gee whiz. That makes me think of like even myself. I mean, how many times do I like just delete the apps on my phone for a little while just because I feel like, man, this thing is low value and just very like easy to just find myself scrolling endlessly, right? Like, we're just like, what the, okay. And you just turn this thing off. Like, I don't know what's making me just like, not think about it and just do it. So those aspects of it though change your way to like connect with me, right? Like, it's like how as a consumer, like how are you going to connect with me because I've just turned off half the things, just to try to clear the noise, which is why, again, it's like so important to, and who am I? Like, maybe you don't want me as your customer, but like but the point being is like, it is important to kind of catch those other channels because, what I find is like, you turn off Instagram and I turn off, I turn it off. I delete the apps from my phone, but suddenly Reddit becomes more, now I'm like reading more because I'm like, oh, well, now, now that idle time fills with something new.
Yep.
Not always is not necessarily better, just new. And so making sure that you're in all those spots, it becomes so much more of a thing because people are doing that too. I mean, even my son who's a Gen Zer, he randomly will be like, yeah, I deleted my this, that, or the other thing just because it was, taking over too much time. And I think that's everybody's thing. Like, you're kind of, there's entertainment value, but there's also like an insane amount of waste that you can do by being sucked into some of these things. And, which is all the more reason as an advertiser to be like, well, we have to literally be everywhere. There's not like a good spot not to be, because it could be that billboard now was the only way that I saw you because I turned everything else off.
Yep. That's always the like, well, where do I put my messaging? It's like, well, who, like, what are your clients doing? Like, what do they enjoy? Going back to that like whole, physiological, psychological thing of like how they entertain themselves or, digest information will vary based on the type of information they're trying to digest.
Sure.
Like some people want to read a blog on how to change their oil. Some people want to watch a how-to.
Yeah.
Some people want to, play a podcast or something like and hear it and do it audibly.
Yep.
Some people want to do it in real time. They're like, okay, I need to have this how-to up and I'm going to watch it as I go through it. My dad is somebody who reads the instruction manuals to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't stand it. Now I get it when you're putting something together, but he used to play some video games and he would bring out the manual and like flip through every page and know how to like do every move. But it would take him 3 months to turn the game on.
Right.
I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Taking the game out, putting it in, I'll figure it out on the go.
Yeah. Right. This is some OJT is what we're going to do. Yeah.
But I mean, like, still, you have to know who your audience is and like what they're going to consume. And your audience may largely be on TikTok, right? Like you could have a very Gen Z product, but they may not be on there looking for your product. Like that may not be their focus, depending on what you're selling or, what your services are. They may be more on Reddit or Instagram for that specific type of product.
Sure.
And so like, you're like, oh, well, they're on TikTok. Like, I know they're there. I'm going to focus all my efforts there. It's like, well,
yeah,
not being other places where they can connect with you and have positive interactions with you is going to limit your potential.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. So at the end of the day, refresh your content.
Yep.
Or use it for inspiration or
refresh, repurpose,
remix. Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah.
I think that covers that.